All right, guys, we're sitting here with Eric, who's based out of Kansas, and Eric actually recorded this with Anakin. And from what I understand, you're kind of based out of your house now. Is that true for this as well, back when you worked on it, or were you working out of a space?
This was actually recorded, was this like 2013 or something? Joel, do you remember?
It's been a while. I don't remember exactly, but it's definitely been like 3 or 4 years.
So this was recorded at Black Lodge Recording Studio in Eudora, Kansas, back when it was still open. And that's why there's tons of tracks, and on there you'll see that there's like some like Royers and like Unidyne and like kind of funny tags on some of the track names, just because I tried to use as many cool mics as I could there, because I knew that it was going out at the time. It became kind of a money pit and victim of the modern recording industry and home recording kind of thing. And but yeah, it was a really, really awesome studio. Huge drum room, all wooden brick in there. And then so we did drums and then like 4 guitar tracks there maybe. And then everything else we did at my house at the time, which is not where I am now. But basically, vocals, more guitars, and I had a closet that you could stand in, and I used a staple gun and nails and to hammer and staple old sleeping bags all along the inside of this closet, and that was like my little vocal booth. I hung a little light in there. And so we cranked some amps up, stuck them in the closet, and that's how we made all the tracks.
So how did you meet the band? Like, what's the story? I mean, I know how I met them. They hit me up. They were originally talking to Ken Andrews, but thankfully Brad liked some of my work better. The band, I think, was Arctic Sleep that got him in, and it was off the Hum tribute.
I was trying to remember that. I was like, it's Arctic something. But yeah, I remember that day when that record came out, and I got a copy of it, and Brad was like, oh my God, you have to hear this guy's mix. We have to get this guy to mix our stuff from now on. And I listened to it, and I was like, holy shit, yes, you should. This is like, it's just so much impact, and like precision, and it just, everything cuts, and it's ridiculous. I think I said something to you, Joel, recently, like everything's louder than everything else all at the same time, kind of a sound. Like, we want to sound like that, and at the time I was sitting there, just a pile of tracks that we'd done, because when I started working with Brad, he had a band called Orion, and I did like a demo for them, or a record for them. We would just layer and layer guitar tracks, and we'd layer more and more stuff. Brad would come in and hang out with me and be like, well, what if it just went like, and then, stopped. And then I was like, okay, let's try that. We'd work on something for a while, and then be like, no, that's not really working out too well. And I kind of felt intimidated, like I'm sitting in this pile of tracks like, man, we really want this to be like really awesome and really crazy and perfect sounding. This is going to be a whole lot of work. And it was kind of around that time when Brad let me know he wanted you to mix all the stuff. And I was kind of, in a way, relieved that, I was like, I don't have to worry. All I have to worry about is just tracking, and editing. And so yeah, that was huge news. And that, I think, definitely changed their band for the better, getting this sort of recording process where they work with mix when it's all done.
Oh, that's funny. One of the most interesting things for me when I met Brad for the first time, and for you guys watching who don't know who Brad is the drummer, and Brad is kind of like the dude in the band who is really like the focal heartbeat. Well, now they have John, and Brad and John definitely are, really, really involved in everything. But Brad was like the mastermind, the original mastermind, like the OG mastermind. And he hit me up and he's like, okay, that Arctic Sleep record, I need to know everything down to the preamp that you recorded, every single little thing. I want to know how you got this tone. I want to know how you got that. I want to know how that drum sound. And I'm like, so I literally sat down and I marked, okay, I used a Neve on guitars, and I used, this converter, and I sent him all the information, and a 57 on this cabinet with this, and he was like fanatical about his tones and like exactly what kind of drum sound he wanted. And it was really awesome because, I mean, as a mixer, he literally came in and he's just like, okay, it needs to sound like this. It's like, okay, how big can we get this thing and how absolutely absurd can we get it to sound? And so, Brad's passion for like really wanting to have like a really big sounding record with absolutely no compromises and just like, how hard can we push the envelope? It's exciting because I don't really get a lot of bands like that. Like a lot of bands are like really opinionated, but sometimes not in a good way. Brad's like, it just needs to sound massive, like as big as you can make it. Big, 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 big. So he was fanatical about it. And that was the first thing. And then the second thing I really remember that is when I got your tracks, Eric, they were like perfect. Like everything was labeled and organized. And that's not something that really happens to me. I think that's a really important lesson and something Joey and I talk about on our podcast all the time. Like Eric right here is a perfect example of an engineer that knows what the hell he's doing. And like when you get shit from Eric, you know it's going to be awesome. And you don't have to worry about it. Like the guitar was tracked right, because like a lot of guys will send me multiple mics on a guitar, but very relieving. And actually it kind of made my job a lot easier because I think if you stick around and actually watch me mix this today, you're going to be surprised how little like plugins and things like that go into this. So let's talk about the tracking process and like cutting drums. So there's a lot of stuff going on drums. I mean, you guys had like a Coles mic, you had a set of rooms, you had like the Bullet, you had where did you put up some of those mics, and like what were you guys originally trying to accomplish with them, or did you just set a bunch of stuff up just to set stuff up?
I always set up some stuff just to set it up, but I kind of have a process that at least at the Black Lodge, the room was so huge, and we had these big giant baffles that you can wheel around. They're like 10 foot high, 8 foot wide, and you just wheel. You can put them all over the place. So I'd put the drums like kind of up against a brick wall, facing out into the room, and then I'd have a baffle on either side of the drums, with plenty of space for the guy to get in and out. But that way I kind of have this kind of sound division where I can put mics kind of on one side of the baffle, and I really get the room way more on those than because the baffle's blocking that direct, so they're getting like an echo that's coming out from around the baffle. And so I think I just kind of close mic the drums normally, and then I start saying, okay, I got those Coles are amazing. God, you just stick them out in front of the drum kit, and all of a sudden you're just like, well, I don't even have to mix these drums now. It sounds great.
I love that. Those are one of my favorite sets of rooms that were provided.
So good. But I got the drummer and then the baffles. There's one behind him too, and then like kind of out in front of the baffles, just to the edge of kind of where I kind of think I can tell where that sound wave is going to get clipped off by the baffle. Just on the other side of that, then I put those 414s out there, kind of farther away. I can't remember if I had those facing the wall or facing I feel like I had them facing the drums, and then I had didn't I have like a Bullet? I think I took a green Bullet. And this was kind of just for fun, kind of a thing to see what happened. But I set it up in like a mic, a shock mount, a microphone shock mount for a condenser mic, just so it's hanging in there, so it's facing straight up at the ceiling. Yeah. And then I just stuck it way far away in the middle of the room, just see how it sounds. Give it to Joel, tell him to put it in there. And what would I have, like a NT1, like stuck pointed at the wall, like really far away from the drummer as well. So you have like stereo room mics. One's more of a direct. One's like I said, those 414s that are kind of on the outer side of where that baffle cuts off the direct sound wave, and then just a couple weird ones around there. And yeah, it was really fun doing that. And I think it's kind of like you said, like you could really kind of use whatever you want. And the thing about that is, it's like you get all those tracks and you're like, well, I'm trying to make the kick drum sound huge, first of all. So, do I obviously don't want to have, some big boomy room sound, that's controlling, the kick drum. And, you start like thinking about like, okay, do I really need this? Do I really need that? And I know a lot of times guys will get like a whole bunch of tracks. They start with like their close mic tracks and then bring in some rooms. It sounds good. And they're like, hey, it sounds good. And they may never even really, listen to all the tracks if they don't need them. And they're just kind of there for options. If you want, you can turn them on or off during certain parts of a song. So like that bullet mic thing, it kind of distorted it and room sound. But yeah, I think I kind of did that to you on the guitars too, because this was before we had like, I think now we've got a pretty established like, we're just putting a 57 right on the cone of the cabinet, and we quad all the heavy riffs because we know that that's easy for you to work with and it sounds great. But like before that, what did I give you? Like
I had the Udine tracks. I had the there was like a 609 in there. There was like a cigar box, which was really cool, by the way.
There was a Marshall, a Boogie that was recorded at the studio with a Royer and a Unidyne 57, and then at home we did like 609 and 57. There's like a crummy little, I don't know if it was one of those actual like pack of cigarettes amps, something like that. Just stuck into a cabinet. I gave you a ton of tracks to sift through because that was kind of what was intimidating to me about like trying to do all this cool stuff with Anakin like in the mix is like, well, there's just so much. Where do you even start?
Yeah.
But
I used most of it actually. I think I cut out a few guitar tracks. Yeah. I only I used all the drum mics, and I used obviously I sampled the kick and snare because that's just the sound of But I actually blended, and some people are a fan of doing that and some are not. It's got its positives and negatives. But I used all the rooms. I think I dropped because the guitars were quadded, I dropped the double miking, like I dropped the Royers, and I think I dropped the I think the 609 on the one, and I took like the Unidyne, or I don't remember. I have to look at it. I know when I'll see the grid, but just because the guitars are quadded. But I did use the cigar box. That guitar was fun. The bass side, because they wanted that Arctic Sleep bass tone, and the only way to get that is to take a Sans amp, and I think I had my Shadow Hills, and I think I ran it into the Shadow Hills and like crushed it on the Sans amp, crushed it on the Shadow Hills, and then into the Burl converters, and like that's that bass sound. Sweet. Well, thank you, Eric, for all of the information. That's been really interesting, and it's very minimalist in terms of like sometimes I do tracks and it'll be like 148 tracks plus on a song or something like that.
Right.
But this is like, I think under 30, but there's a lot of like mic guitar. So like the band in terms of the production is very simplistic. Like it's very basic. It's just guys jamming like a band without a bunch of post-production and, snare bombs and bass drops and all these fancy effects. It's just like a guitar, a bass, a drum, a vocal, and a synth. And, but that's not the challenge. The challenge is getting that combination of those 5 elements to sound absolutely as massive and huge as it can possibly sound, and finding different ways to combine them to get, to make it just sound ridiculous. So, like
I said, it's intimidating to get a huge pile of tracks that are all good, and to try and make decisions with them.
Yes.
What do I do?